Welcome to all who are watching us today. Welcome to all who will be watching this video after this live session. Today we have for MYC a very special guest, an animal whisperer, Anna Breytenbach from South Africa. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
I'll just introduce you briefly to our audience. Anna Breytenbach is a professional animal communicator, and she received advanced training through the Assisi International Animal Institute in California. And she has been practicing for 18 years in America, Europe, and South Africa with domestic and wild animals. And today, Anna will share with us what it is that animal whisperers actually do, how does she do it, and what are the experiences of animals, etc., etc. If you have any questions, please add them to the comment section, and if we have additional time, we will ask Anna to respond to those for us. Thank you to all for joining, and thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us for our interview today. It's really a pleasure to have you with us. It's really, to us, it's really fascinating. Your work, it's actually mind-blowing for us, and it's beyond the understanding of the regular human mind. So I would like you to share with us what it is that you actually do.
Well, animal whispering or telepathic animal communication happens in the non-verbal space. So it happens at the energetic level, which is all very explainable by quantum physics. So one way to understand it better is to say what it's not. It is not being an animal behaviorist. It's not watching physical behavior or facial expressions and then interpreting with our human minds and projections what that might mean, or having to understand or study dog psychology or horse behavior. It's what happens at the energetic level behind behavior. And the quantum physics of it explains very easily how telepathy works. In fact, since the 1880s in both the US and the UK, the universities have been doing experiments on telepathy between humans, meaning the energetic or mind-to-mind transfer of information, of data, across great distance even. So as it turns out, this is possible not just between humans, but between human animals and non-human animals as well. And a fabulous resource, if anyone wants to find out more about it, is the website of Rupert Sheldrake, S-H-E-L-D-R-A-K-E, sheldrake.org, because he's the scientist who, with all the Western science designed experiments, proved telepathy between people and their pets, their dogs in particular. So what it is, it's a non-physical sending and receiving of information. It's like a two-way radio almost, and we are connected with the other being in these energetic ways, and we are sharing information. I can just silently in my mind ask a question, and the animal will receive the nature of my inquiry and can show what their response is, what their thoughts or feelings are about a matter or their emotions. And then in turn, I will receive their answer as an energetic parcel inside myself. I will have that feeling that they're having. If I'm communicating with a cat with a very itchy skin that they're scratching a lot, I might suddenly start to feel like I want to scratch that corresponding part of my body. Or if an animal is very sad or anxious about something, I will feel a mild dose of their sadness or their anxiety inside myself, during the time of connection. So it all happens at the unconscious or the intuitive level. And it's about using our, picking up the mind again to notice what's happening on the intuitive level, to let it come through from the unconscious through the subconscious to our conscious brain, so that we can describe the communication even to ourselves as an internal process. So that's a little bit of how it works. And I guess it's called in a sort of common term, it's called animal whispering, because it's silent, it's quiet, the feeling of the word whispering is also quite a gentle one. And this communication truly only happens in a space of compassion and care and a real respect for the other as a sentient being, as a conscious being. And it's a beautiful space to enter into with another being. And it is a two-way sending and receiving. It's not just doing a remote psychic reading or something, and we don't use crystal balls or some hair of the animal or any other intermediary. It's a very direct perception method.
So it requires a level of subtlety for this work, is that right?
It absolutely does. And for it not to be subtle, which happens spontaneously in life sometimes, it usually has to be because it's very, very important or critical or suddenly dangerous. That's when our intuition breaks through, our ordinary, everyday, sort of busy mind stuff. Our intuition breaks through when something is very important, or when another is in extreme distress. We can pick that up. But this requires us to turn our attention intentionally to our own more subtle state of being, our own essence, and to, in a way, listen on the inner for the subtle perceptions, which would be the truth of the other that one is perceiving with one's own subtle senses. Yes.
So would you say this is an inborn talent for you, or is it something that anybody can learn?
I think it's sort of somewhere in between those two. It's really inborn for everybody. It literally is how our brains and our beings are designed. It is the blueprint of our being. And it's not so long ago, only about 12,000 years or so ago, that our human ancestors used to be much more in this way every day. The hunters and the gatherers, the nomadic peoples, to them this was another language, a silent language, interchanged with the plants, with the soils, with the elements. I mean, what is a rain dance if not an embodied prayer to the water element? And a prayer is a form of communication. They were speaking with the animals, as I said, with the elements. They would know where to start digging in the sand of the Kalahari Desert to find a water-bearing bulb of an underground grass, in a desert where there's no water on the surface at all. And that's not because they were digging under every little bush to look. It's because they were in direct communication with reverence and with respect, explaining their human need and asking if that species would be willing to give some of its plant life for their sustenance. And so when humans still lived in a way that was acknowledging our species as just being part of the circle of life, before we made ourselves above everything else and created this hierarchy and now suffer this big superiority complex. Before that, this was a very ordinary way of interacting and of being, even between humans across great distance. Now, not much at all has changed in the anatomy of ourselves in these more modern times. It is literally still how we are designed. And in ordinary waking life, we use only about 10 to 12% of our brain is firing. So I'd like to believe that the other 90% is up to something. So it's not something that one has to learn, but it is something one has to remember. Only because modern life doesn't value this, doesn't have us pay attention to it. The education systems educate us out of our intuition, but it's something we can easily again remember with any method or practice we may have that can let us find some stillness where the subtle can be perceived.
Yes. So basically, we all carry it within. We just need to recall this this so-called talent we all carry. That's wonderful. And when you speak about the animals and the way we communicated thousands of years ago, and when we see the human insensitivity, or as you also say, the superiority complex that we as humans have somehow built in our system, have you had an insight how the animals feel about it?
They are very aware these days that the cause of most of their problems and the poisoning of their environments and the destruction of their habitats is because of humans. It's very obvious to them. And I am continually amazed how much compassion they have for us. The animals, the large ones or the ones with big teeth, could have so easily risen up against their captors or the transgressors or those who have burned down or clear cut their forest. But they don't. And this is in keeping with how they feel in general, which is a lot of compassion and concern for how we have lost our way, beyond any selfishness on their part. It's not just about them desiring things to be better, more pleasant and easy for them. It's also a sense of care for how lost we have become. And they don't judge us. They don't judge us for having lost our way or for how we treat them. I mean, they know about it and they really wish it to be different, but amazingly, they don't judge us for it.
Wow, that's a really a great example of unconditionality, actually, and selflessness and compassion. That's really amazing. Sometimes we forget how much we can learn from animals, actually. And thank you for being here with us to remind us about that. And coming back to your story and your background, could you explain to us a little bit how you realized that this is your calling?
Well, it was not especially privileged or wild childhood. I was born in South Africa in Cape Town and had a very ordinary suburban upbringing, attending a regular public school and going to university and getting a degree in psychology and business and ho-hum off to the corporate world, But I chose to spend my free time involved in conservation, volunteering in bird rescue and rehabilitation. I became a cheetah handler. That's a big cat. And I would spend my weekends and my free time always interested in conservation and nature. But there was nothing that came my way until I was living and working in the San Francisco area in the US. And because I was quite frustrated by my work in IT, it was very mentally stimulating, but really just quite soulless. I decided to spend my weekends learning tracking, as in following animal footprints and deciphering the mysteries of nature and being able to tell the stories in the sand. And luckily, I chose to do my tracking workshops through the Wilderness Awareness School, because they are very eager to have people remember their old ways and how to see through native eyes. So this wasn't just about learning the shape of animal footprints and then trying to remember in my head things that I'd studied to identify out in nature. It was rather about discovering in nature, in the most mysterious of ways, being able to see, even without knowing what animal it was, why did they choose to go this way and not just 3 meters the other direction? Were they running or resting or walking or dragging a foot? And all these lovely mysteries began to unfold. But I was already in my early 30s and I had grown up in South Africa, not North America. So I really didn't know what I was looking at out there. I had no idea. And that was the best thing, because that means that my logical mind, my left brain, couldn't figure it out. And only when I was relieved of my own, analytical thinking, did information start to come forward in other ways. So there might be a particular track that I didn't understand. And the instructor said, well, just close your eyes and hold your hand over the track and see what happens. Feel it. And I thought, you're just mad. You're barking mad. But I had no better idea. And when I did that, I would start to get information, the exact mental image behind my closed eyelids of a slightly scruffy wild dog face, very gray, bigger than a jackal, smaller than a wolf. And when I described that, the instructor said, yes, that is a coyote's track. And I said, what's a coyote? I didn't even know. So a few things like this happened, which completely freaked me out, because my belief systems, my very scientific brain didn't have a place for this. And this is one of the big problems with being human, is that unless we understand something, we don't like to accept it. I was very much in the way of, you have to see it to believe it. And now I'm on the other side of the fence, which is if you believe something to be possible, then you will actually see it. Until then, we blind ourselves, you know. So anyway, when this began happening, I thought, oh no, I'm mentally ill. There's spooky things happening. Am I possessed, or what's going on? Am I mentally ill? And I did my research and discovered that there is actually a whole field called telepathic interspecies communication. And that at the very least, I wasn't the only crazy person. And so with my vacation days from my office job, I then over the next 2 years studied various workshops in this, which were very practical. And that, I think, is a very good way to get started, is to just get about doing it. No pressure. Treat it as a fun thing to do. Treat it as a game. And we did something like 60 case studies for the Institute that we would get evaluated on. And slowly, it was very slow for me. It took me a couple of years to finally accept that this is real. Because no matter the evidence in the case studies, I was getting such specific information from animals I couldn't have known in any other way, like the whole description of the tattoo on somebody's arm. But it's amazing, again, how my ego-based mind wanted to talk me out of the intuitive. But eventually the sheer weight of evidence just had me have to accept that this is real, and I haven't looked back since. And it was a very good match for my care for animals and conservation. Now I had found a way, not through formal education, but I had found a way to be of service in that way to the natural world, which has always been a great passion of mine.
Wow. That's really an amazing story, and I'm so happy to hear another example of, you know, the pure logical and scientific mind actually getting the evidence, and there's no way other than to believe this is really true.
Exactly, the logical mind had to come to the party.
Yes, and there is hope that we can actually go back to the stage where we were all silently communicating with animals and amongst ourselves as well. There is still hope. So now you're back to South Africa, and you are spending time in nature, probably with the animals. How can you share with us a little bit of how you spend your time there?
I spend 95% of my time behind a computer screen as a self-employed person. So honestly, that's what it looks like. It's all the admin and events organizing and website stuff and newsletters, and, you know, so that's the reality. It's not a glamorous life to be out in the wild areas or in the bush. And the only way I get to be there is if I am, well, in times gone by, I've run, you know, animal communication safaris. But the other thing is that in the consultation work I do, which is exclusively with wildlife and human-wildlife conflict or ecosystem repair, the consultation work I do, I don't have to go anywhere, because this works across distance. This energetic form of communication is not negatively impacted or influenced at all by the distance between the parties communicating. So I don't have to burn fossil fuels to get places, or, you know, have a big footprint on the planet. I can sit at home and tune in from here to whichever elephant or organic farm, you know, is needing the assistance. And so that's what I do. All my pro bono work is for the wildlife in trouble, and there's a lot of that.
Yes, energy has no boundaries, so it's all possible. And can you explain to us a little bit how is your work reflected on their behavior? How can you see the difference in their behavior?
When I communicate with an animal around something that's troubling them, there's certainly one thing always happens, is that they are very grateful that someone is taking the time and the interest to find out what is really motivating their behavior. Because behind any behavior, there's always a motivation, some need or desire that is looking to be filled. And even if someone is having trouble with the horse throwing off the rider the whole time, or trying to bite, it would be wrong to say, oh, my horse is behaving aggressively. That's incorrect. That's an assumption. The horse might be in pain, might have physical back pain. The horse might have teeth trouble. So this is a pain condition. It's not aggression. The horse is not feeling aggression as an emotion. And so it's always important to not describe a behavior, rather ask the animal, what makes you do that? Or what are you trying to achieve or tell us? And they always appreciate the fact that the person who might have called me in is interested in really trying to help find a solution. So there's often quite a softening on the part of the animal because they relax into knowing that they cared for, and there's an invitation for something to be transformed. Whether or not their actual behavior around the issue changes, though, depends on what solutions are put on the table. It depends on if what they desire can be met. Perhaps one dog in a household of 10 dogs really wants to be an only pet and wants all the other 9 dogs just gone. So so people are not going to do that. Then that dog's not necessarily going to change his mind or his behavior. So behavior change is not always guaranteed. Don't forget that this is a sentient conversation between two beings, and sometimes it can look a little bit like a negotiation. So once we explain the alternatives and the consequences, and they might suggest what they want, it's a whole sort of consultation, sometimes with the people involved as well. And if all parties agree on something, then they will change their behavior. But it has to be a sort of agreed or negotiated settlement. So they won't change behavior just because we're communicating with and telling them to. It has to be more meaningful and more caring than that.
Yes, understood. And what from your experience, what is the most common issue that animals face? Is there one common issue, or?
Yeah, look, there's many ways in which their discomfort plays out. But I think if there's one common thread, it's that they face huge amounts of projections being placed upon them. They just are always receiving projections of their behavior, of their mood, of their actions, even of their facial expressions. They have human projections placed upon them so often. I mean, a lot of pets in the world are basically surrogate human children. And believe me, an adult cat or an adult dog does not want to be called my baby and, we are not their mothers and their fathers. Have you checked your anatomy lately? So, and that can keep them in a very belittled, we're very belittling to them. We're making them less empowered and less adult and less sentient when we're always talking down to them, even in a loving way. So they face a lot of projections and being misunderstood, because we humans will approach animals, even those who live close with us, we will approach them from our mindset. And they really wish for us to just stop a moment and feel into what is their truth, both at a species level, that their realities might be different, their priorities are different. And then even within a species, one can't really generalize, because it does come down to the individual. You might find an individual member of, let's say, a dog pack or a horse herd, who normally, those species normally like to hang out together, but you might find an individual dog or horse who's an independent loner and doesn't want to be with others. Or you might find a cat who wants nothing more than to live with a whole herd of cats. So it really does come down to acknowledging them as their own beings, rather than bothering to try to interpret them through the automatic human lens we have. We can't help it. That is a perception filter of ours. We need to go into a form of inner silence that we can drop that, or at least just let it be in the background, and rather perceive what is true for them.
Yes, thank you. And as you spoke about, our relationships with pets, can you share with us a little bit how they feel, how you experience they feel about their owners? And is there anything, your advice to the owners, that we as humans should change towards our pets?
They will have different views of the people who are providing for them. Sometimes they will literally see the human as a provider and appreciate that. And sometimes they'll see us as a friend and an equal, sometimes as the master. Sometimes they'll see a human as someone to manipulate. Sometimes they'll see a human as someone to take care of and to do their best to try to help. So our pets have many different roles in our lives as well. They also have their own roles in their life. They are here to exude a certain quality or to learn something or to integrate something in this lifetime. And then in addition, they might have some roles relative to us. But what they really genuinely feel is that we humans lately have become very unpresent. We might live under the same roof as them, and we share time when we are home, which is usually, I suppose, for most people, only at the end of the day after studying or being at school or working. But with all our device usage this day, or binging on movies or whatever, we're not really present with them. They're hanging around at the floor level and we're distracted. We might eat something in the evenings, and then we are very busy as humans with those who are not there through our devices, through social media. And the animals, our pets, are left like, well, you're just an empty shell. You are here, but you're not engaging with me. You're not connecting with me. You're elsewhere. And to just be idly, in a distracted manner, be petting your dog who's next to you on the couch isn't the same. Doing that for an hour is much less valuable than you giving them 5 minutes of your undivided attention. So pets a lot are just regarding us as hollow shells who are there in our bodies, but not with our mind and not with our presence. And it's pretty obvious what we can do to change that, right? We could just spend some quality time. Let's acknowledge them. When we come home, let's really greet them properly. When we're leaving, let's say goodbye. Let's relate as a verb. That's what they wish for.
Yes. Great advice. Thank you so much. And as you mentioned that basically we all have that ability within. Is there anything that we all as humans and all of us who are watching here, is there any practical advice that we can do on a daily basis or on or occasionally that we can develop that and become more compassionate, more connected to the animals, or maybe even those who are aspiring to get connected to the animals as well, like you were doing?
Entering a state of silence, or at least relative silence, is a very good way. So if you have any kind of meditation practice that isn't concentration focused, but any kind of meditation practice or yoga, any stillness orientated practice, it would really help you enter the zone. And when starting out, it's important to not have a very high agenda, to not be attached to outcome or expect long lists of essays from your animals. They don't make small talk. They don't communicate for the sake of it. It's only about things that are relevant. So my advice would be to just sit quietly, preferably with your eyes closed, because then you're less distracted by surroundings. And if the animal happens to be in the room with you, you're also less distracted by their facial expression. That'll just have your mind start to think about what they might be trying to convey. So rather sit quietly with your eyes closed, sit still, and just with your awareness, follow your natural breathing rhythm as a way to become present in a very embodied way. Unless you're a very experienced meditator, it's quite unlikely everything will be completely blissfully quiet on the inner. But that's okay. Any distracting thoughts or sounds or distractions from the environment, let's just bounce off the surface of your mind or pass straight through. Just watch your natural breathing rhythm to stay centered. And then it can be helpful to invoke a visualization, purely for the sake of our mind, to believe that we are connected. You see, simply intending to connect is already good enough. That instantly makes it happen. And not always when we initiate it, by the way. Often an animal will connect with us first or have us know something. A thought will just drop into our head. But when we want to, when we intend to, they pick that up already. But for the sake of focus, it can be helpful to visualize building some sort of energetic bridge or channel that connects you being to being, heart to heart with the animal. You don't need to be in physical contact with them. You don't need to be touching them. And once you feel, and don't expect any amazing feedback. They're not going to be surprised that you're connecting in this way. They're not going to be overjoyed or give you a high five. It will all just still be peaceful. You'll start to think, oh boy, nothing's happening. And then when you're feeling at some point just quite restful inside, you can perhaps silently imagine one simple question, which is, please show me anything you would like me to know. Just show me anything you would like me to know. And then here comes the really tricky part, is to stay silent on the inner, to just stay silent. Let it take several minutes and just notice what perceptions come your way. All sorts of random things will come your way, and maybe 5 different possibilities, but just be patient, sit with that until one of the possibilities on an intuitive level, on an instinctive level, feels more real, or comes back repeatedly, or be the one thought that won't go away. And it may not be a thought, it might not be a knowing kind of a thought, it might be a feeling on your body or an emotion. And if it's a feeling on your body, if you suddenly get a slightly warm right shoulder, then ask more, say, what is that about? Mm-hmm. So be organic with it, but allow a lot of time to just be in a receptive state and trust that it is happening. It just takes the mind a while sometimes to be able to discern what's happening on the intuitive level.
Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely give it a try. No expectations, no agenda, and I invite all of those who are watching to also give it a try, and maybe we get some evidence like Anna got many years ago for herself as well. And Anna, I watched some of your videos on YouTube. That is a really amazing work. I watched especially the one with Diavolo, the wild cat that was called Diavolo, and now Spirit, as I remember. Would you like to share with us one of your most mind-blowing or favorite experiences that you had?
I find that the simple and short ones, I find for me the most sweet, because there's not a whole problem-solving, kind of project really. And some of the most amazing and simple things have been just spontaneous encounters with wildlife. And there was once that I was out on a hike, actually, and this is not a wildlife story, but nonetheless it speaks to a sort of a sudden encounter. But I was out on a hike in bear country, and we were watchful for bears. But as we rounded a corner, there were 2 huge dogs, 2 Doberman dogs, who had been out with their person who was riding a bike, but he was fixing a puncture. And the dogs got a fright, we got a fright, and they charged towards us, obviously now deciding they needed to protect their person who was in a vulnerable position. So they had claimed the trail as their own. And one of the worst things to do is to be giving off fear, because that's palpable, you can really feel it. And that just puts fear into the field, quite literally, which will make the animal also more fearful. And just whatever we are thinking and feeling is being broadcast on an energetic level the whole time. And that's how we are influencing everything around us. So it calls us into taking quite a lot of responsibility for our thoughts and our states of mind. Nonetheless, because of the fright, we were like this. And my boyfriend was walking in front of me, and he had had a very traumatic experience as a child, being very badly injured and mauled by a dog. So he was especially fearful and froze in fright. And the front dog, from a few meters away, launched itself to try to attack him. It was aiming for hitting him at the top part of his body. But in an instant, I stepped around in front of him. It was no brave act. There was no time to decide to be brave. It was just this, I just realized it was all a big misunderstanding. And I just stepped out in front of him, and I just, in an instant, was able to access a feeling of deep peacefulness. We come in peace and sorry, but mostly the peace. I just accessed, like peace. And this is what's needed, is peace. But I had to be peace. It wasn't a conceptual thought. It wasn't like, please be peaceful. So I accessed the state of peace. I remember just feeling like I was, sending it, like I was just beaming peace. And the dog was mid-air by then. Physically, the dog was committed to the attack. But it was amazing. As he was airborne, incoming, his whole facial expression even changed. You could see he suddenly wanted to not attack, but it was too late. So he tried to backpedal in the air, and he turned his head away and sort of half fell to the ground, and then came over and licked our feet. But he got the memo. He got the memo mid-air that this was actually all fine, and he was able to shift into peace rather than continue on the trajectory that he was in.
Wow, that is really tangible evidence.
Yes, yes, yes. He was even quite confused. He was like, "I was busy doing something. What's changed?" You know. That he was immediately friendly. Yeah. Mm.
That is actually how your skill is useful in daily life actually as well.
Yes, yes,
It's not
absolutely. And
only.
exactly, daily life. I mean, at the end of every day, when it's still light, I go around and check all the glass windows and the doors because there's bound to be some insects that have got trapped inside the house during the course of the day in summertime. So I check, and those that are there, I help to take outside again. But I have to work as well, so I can't spend hours doing it. So I ask for their help to make it more efficient. And most of the time, I don't even need to get a jar or something or some paper. I just put my hand out. Now, for a small insect to be confronted with this big, smelly clump of human flesh is not a very pleasant or safe option. But I imagine myself in their perspective, because if you're going to be suggesting information to an animal, it's important to be very specific and step by step from their perspective, what it would look like to them. So I literally imagine that I'm the insect looking back up at me and right in front of my insect eyes, seeing this big hand. And then I picture myself as the insect walking forward onto the hand. And meanwhile, I'm communicating, please, this is safe, gentle. And if you do this, I will take you outside to freedom. And then I project a mental image of the outdoors and them flying free. And it's amazing. 9 times out of 10, they, without any hesitation, climb onto my hand and then hold on while I take them out of the door and release them. So literally in everyday life, we can be that related and that cooperative with those who are living around us, even if they're normally too small to see.
Yes. So one of the elements is, first of all, compassion, as you mentioned in the beginning, and then a deep sense of peace that we need to really live what we're saying to them, right? We can't just
Yes,
say it to them. We have to really, really mean
yes,
it and really be the embodiment of that.
yes.
Yeah, that's a great sort of life philosophy for all of us, not just
Mm,
for anybody who is aspiring to become or develop that subtlety, really on a daily basis in daily life, to actually live with that integrity,
mm,
to do
mm,
and be the embodiment. Thank you. That's
mm.
a cute tip that I will also try to implement.
Great.
And apart from all the beautiful and amazing experiences that you have had, did you ever have, or are there any so-called unpleasant? I wouldn't call it negative
Mm,
effects
mm,
because nothing is negative or positive, but something that you felt is unpleasant. Any experience or
mm.
effect from your whole work?
I think it's more the effects that can be quite difficult to bear and quite uncomfortable, because my work is in the problem solving or conflict realm, and it's always the animals that are suffering in any consultation that I'm involved with. It's animals that are suffering or misunderstood or abused or injured or being murdered or trapped in snares, and so because I am communicating with them and asking them to show me how they feel, I get to feel all of those things. And I'm not communicating with delightfully happy animals who have no issues, because, well, no one calls me in to change that, right? So the cumulative effect, really, I have to monitor myself, my own well-being, because the emotional states of the animals in distress is quite significant. And also, most of the time, there's no help coming. They can express how they're feeling, but the decision makers or the farmers or the wildlife reserve managers are not going to actually change things to meet their needs. And so things don't change, their situation doesn't improve. So so some of the unpleasant things is really knowing fully the absolute distress of that rhino baby who's lost its mother when poachers came and shot the mother and took the horns. And there's that baby who's absolutely distressed, needs a mother. there's no way you can explain them out of their distress, and I really feel that as their experience. So it's been very good spiritual training for me in a way to allow these feelings and these waves, but to not have my own reaction to them, which I used to do in the beginning. I used to be quite an angry activist and upset with what humans are doing, and petitioning here and there, and I realized it's just me in reaction again. So it's been, the animals have been my greatest teachers in how to be with even the very uncomfortable, and to just be with it with compassion, to to hold it, and to just keep showing up. But I do have to watch how much I take on, in what intensity and in what density.
Yes, so actually it also, so to say, it gets reflected on your physical body, and then you have to take rest as well and take your time to recover. So basically you feel their experience and their suffering on yourself.
Yes, and because of my own meditation practice also, I've become quite mentally and maybe emotionally strong along the way, that this body tends to take the hit as well. And so I have to keep slowing down quite a lot to just pace myself, to acknowledge that kindness to myself and kindness to this animal body is also part of the honoring.
Yes. So one of the fascinating things that I learned today about animals, actually I never even thought about it, is their compassion, their amount of compassion towards us, and unconditionality and selflessness. And it really, I mean, I'm not an activist, but it hurts me as well when I see in today's world what all we do to animals. And now that you actually get to experience this, not only through communicating with them, but also on your physical body as well, can you share with us one thing or one advice for all of us, like what it is that we can do more, or what it is that we should do less, considering the animal world?
Well, there's a term that I think was described by Andrew Harvey called sacred activism. And this is something we can do. It's like a version of prayer or long distance intention. Often the things that we get upset about do inform what we care about. But are we going to stay in the upset, or rather turn that into an energy that is potentially helpful? So one thing we can all do is to literally envision a positive or more pleasant outcome for the animal. It doesn't need to be even specific. If there's something really hurtful and distressing going on somewhere in the world, even far away, we can have our feelings and our judgments of it, but can we energetically turn that into like an inner blessing for those animals? And that we just pray for, we ask for their highest good, for their well-being, without dictating how that should even happen or what that needs to look like. Because we are literally, on the quantum physics level, we are literally contributing that helpful energy and vibration into the field that becomes part of the reality. So that's what we can all do, is to hold the positive vibrations and hold them in that sort of loving blanket.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I would just like to inspire all our watchers to ask Anna any questions if you do have any, and we haven't covered it in this video, just because we have this special time with her on this very rare occasion. And I would like to ask you one question that I was curious about. I read somewhere and I heard that the wild cats are very spiritual animals. Could you tell us a little bit about the difference in the animal species, and a little bit more with the wild cats, if you had any experience or any insight?
Yeah, I do work exclusively with wildlife, and used to be a big cat handler. And no one species is any more or less spiritual than another. So, in human history, we have idolized cats, and we found them so mysterious. So we have we have ascribed in particular spiritual qualities to them, but they are no more spiritual than an ant or an elephant or a cow or a spider. And I find that's the case because all animals are authentically in themselves, and they are residing in their essence, in their essential nature, and it's from that place that they're communicating with us. And the non-human animals are also very connected into the collective. They really are part of the circle of life. They're connected into their collective consciousness of their species as well. They have immense understanding and practice of some of the, let's say, the spiritual ideals that we humans might spend a lifetime trying to pursue. Things like stillness and presence, or intuition or non-judgment. All the species have this, and perhaps we think cats are especially spiritual because they're so mysterious. But like I say, every animal that is living from its own essential spirit is by definition spiritual.
Yes, wonderful. So actually, we could say they're more advanced than us.
Yes, but somehow we've lost a lot. We've forgotten a lot along the way. So yeah, we could learn a lot from them.
Oh, wow. Yes, amazing insights for me today. I hope for all those who are watching with us as well. And Anna, can you please tell us if somebody would like to learn the skill apart from having it inborn, as every being does have it? Do you host any workshops or trainings or camps that somebody could attend?
I'm not offering anything at this time. Over the next few months, we'll be developing some online materials, but there's the most fabulous resource. There's a lovely elder called Penelope Smith, who is considered the grandmother of interspecies telepathic communication. And her website, animaltalk.net, is the most robust resource for self-paced learning materials, downloadable audios, journal articles, guided meditations, and also for anyone who's looking to potentially use a professional animal communicator to help resolve some issue they might be having. Then on that same website, animaltalk.net, there's a database of professional animal communicators around the world who have agreed to a certain code of conduct and ethics. Because like in any field, there's a whole span of people, and you get everything from the sort of very cheesy pet psychic on TVs, or you get a lot of ego, or you get those who want to train animals better to just obey humans or win dog shows. And then you get those who are really deeply reverent and respectful of animals' innate nature and sentience and equality. So I can highly recommend that website for any resources. And almost a year ago now, I did a series of 4 talks based on the 4 elements around how we could invoke some of the old ways of knowing and get more in touch with our intuition. And that What on Earth series is available. I believe the website link will be posted here, but it's under lionheartworkshops.com, and the What on Earth audio podcasts are available there for purchase.
Wonderful. Yes, we have shared this link in the description of this video, and we have shared the link to your website as well. So anybody who would be interested to follow your work and download the workshops and talks, which are amazing, I'm sure, especially after getting to know you better today. The links are in the description of the video, and I hope that we as youngsters and all who are watching can inspire others as well to either follow the work or read more, or a little bit get to know more about how what brought us back in the evolution of humans, that what took us away from animals and develop more subtlety towards animals as well. Because one of the core values of us in the Mohanty Youth Club is compassion. And I'm so happy to hear that this is one of the core values that a person needs to have to develop this kind of relationship with animals, and that this is what the animals feel towards us as well. Thank you so much I'm really grateful for your time today, and I know we heard about you quite some years ago, and I'm happy that we finally got the opportunity to speak to you and meet you, not physically but virtually at least, and hopefully when we travel to South Africa we can maybe even meet you in physical reality, if not other realities.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who's watching this for the interest as well. Yeah, even for those or for your friends who might be very skeptical about telepathy between species, on my YouTube channel, which is the Animal Spirit channel, there's also just some very light, short videos on how to be helpful in ordinary, everyday ways, how to live kindly with the non-humans around us. So yes, thank you to all of you for choosing to embody these qualities and fabulous, inspiring and enjoyable relationships with those animals that are around you or those you're yet to meet.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will share the links to your channel as well. I'll add it to the description of the video so that all our viewers and myself as well can learn a little bit more and develop some more subtlety and learn more about compassion as well. And I hope to hear more from you sometime in the future and meet you physically as well. And I hope we get some more insights from you for our viewers as well sometime in the future.
Thank you so much. Bless you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all who joined our live session today. The video will be available on our YouTube channel in another few days as well.
Thank you.